5. Quantifying BATNA and setting the walkaway line. Understanding your best alternative. Every negotiation requires knowing your best alternative to the current deal before you start talking. Negotiation experts call this your BATNA, which stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. Your BATNA is simply what you will do if this deal fails and you walk away from the table. The stronger your alternative, the more leverage you have to demand better terms from the seller. Without a clear alternative, you negotiate from weakness because the seller knows you have nowhere else to go. Calculating your alternative value. Your alternative has a specific financial value that compares directly to the deal you are negotiating. If you can acquire a similar company for $200 billion, that becomes your BATNA value for comparison. You must also add the time cost and transaction expenses required to pursue that alternative deal. Finding and closing the alternative might take 18 additional months and cost $50 million in advisory fees. These costs reduce your BATNA value, meaning you might accept slightly worse terms on the current deal to avoid delay. The opposite side, your worst alternative. You also need to know your WATNA, which stands for Worst Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. This represents what happens if you walk away and your backup plan also fails to materialize. Your worst case might be returning capital to investors and admitting you cannot deploy the committed funds. Understanding both best and worst alternatives gives you the boundaries for acceptable negotiation outcomes. Part 2. Setting your walkaway price. The walkaway price is the maximum amount you will pay before terminating negotiations completely. This number comes from your financial model, showing the minimum return threshold your investors require. For example, if paying more than $280 billion for Micron drops your IRR below 15%, then $280 billion becomes your walkaway price. You communicate this limit to your internal team, but never reveal the specific number to the seller. The seller should only sense that you have a firm price limit without knowing exactly where that line sits. Defining non-negotiable conditions. Beyond price, you also need non-negotiable conditions that must be met for the deal to close. These are protections so fundamental that no price reduction can compensate if the seller refuses them. Regulatory approvals might be non-negotiable because without them, the deal cannot legally close regardless of price. Full indemnification for known litigation might be non-negotiable because the exposure exceeds your total return from the deal. Key employee retention agreements might be non-negotiable because the business cannot operate without specific technical expertise. The price versus certainty trade-off. Sometimes you must choose between a lower price with more risk or a higher price with better protections. A seller might offer $270 billion with minimal indemnification or $285 billion with comprehensive protections. Your decision depends on whether the $15 billion premium adequately covers the incremental risk you are accepting. This trade-off analysis requires quantifying the probability and magnitude of each risk that better protections would eliminate. Part 3. Applying walkaway analysis to Micron. JCinus identifies their BATNA as acquiring SK Hynix instead of Micron for an estimated $220 billion. However, SK Hynix operates primarily in South Korea, adding regulatory complexity and integration challenges. The team estimates an additional $15 billion in integration costs and 24 months of execution delay. This means their effective BATNA value is $220 billion plus $15 billion, or $235 billion adjusted for the time delay. Their WATNA is returning $50 billion to fund investors without completing any semiconductor acquisition this year. Setting Micron negotiation boundaries. Based on this analysis, JCinus sets their walkaway price at $290 billion for Micron equity value. Above $290 billion, they earn better risk-adjusted returns by pursuing SK Hynix, despite the added complexity. They also defined 3 non-negotiable conditions that no price reduction can replace. First, China MOFCOM approval must be a condition precedent allowing deal termination if denied. Second, full indemnification for the $2.8 billion Samsung litigation must be included with no cap. Third, retention agreements for the top 8 semiconductor engineers must be executed before closing. Communicating limits without revealing numbers. During negotiation, JCinus will never state their $290 billion walkaway price explicitly to the seller. Instead, they signal firmness through statements like, "We have alternative opportunities if terms do not meet our thresholds." This approach maintains negotiation tension while protecting their position from seller exploitation. The investment committee has approved this boundary, giving the deal team authority to walk away at $290 billion without seeking further permission.